Welcome back to the channel. My name is David. This is Fresh Faces New Ideas. If you like the content that I do and you like what I talk about and you want to support me, please like and subscribe or follow me on Twitter at Faces Ideas, or you can listen to me on the Center Left Radio podcast. So this one, I'm not going to really go into any further details of pulling up numbers and stuff, but a lot of stuff has happened today. So today's 3/10, and there's a lot of stuff. First, the American Rescue Plan, Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill, was passed by the House. No Republicans voted for it. One Democrat voted against it. I still haven't figured out who that is or what the reporting is or what their reasoning for that is. So now there have been 3 votes on the American Rescue Plan, and it has garnered a grand total of 0 Republicans. 0. This bill has 75% overall support and is supported among 59% of Republicans. 59%. And no Republican looked at it and said, I'm okay with those numbers. You know what? I think I'm going to support this like the rest of the American people. They said, you know what? No. I don't want to help you at all. The other things that happened, the HUD Secretary, Maria Fudge, is that? Hold on, let me just double check the name. Damn it. Okay. The Fudge is her last name. I don't remember what her first name is, but now she is HUD Secretary Fudge. And Merrick Garland have both been confirmed. So Merrick Garland, who should have been on the Supreme Court, but Mitch McConnell said, no, I'm going to make up this arbitrary McConnell rule just for you, Merrick Garland, just for you, that the president cannot seat a Supreme Court justice in the year of an election, so you will not get a hearing. And he did not seat Merrick Garland, and then that seat went to Neil Gorsuch. That was Neil Gorsuch's seat. And then, when Amy Coney Barrett was up for nomination after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, Mitch McConnell rambled through with 8 days before the election after 62 million people had already voted. So the fact that he said he actually voted to confirm him is a slap to Merrick Garland's face. And anytime anyone talks about this nomination, they have to discuss the fact that the reason Merrick Garland is even up for this position is because the Republicans decided they just going to block him, and they did. It's as simple as that. So that vote was 30 to 74, 30 against. I haven't seen the names against it. It'll be interesting to see who voted against it. I imagine Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley are probably among them. But we'll see. Look, this is good. So now we have a HUD secretary. We have an education secretary, I believe. We have Merrick Garland. So there's a lot of stuff Merrick Garland has to get to. He has to go into the January 6th riots, the rising domestic terrorism threat. He has to actually look into, because I think the way Joe Biden put this was he needs the AG and the education secretary and the HUD secretary to look at the student debt crisis to decide how much he can actually get rid of before he tries to push it through Congress. Because we already know he said he's not going to get rid of all student debt. We know that he said he's not going to get rid of 50,000 student debt, because somewhere between the 10,000 that he said he can do and the 50,000 that he won't do, it becomes out of his power. So it's not clear where his thoughts are there. He said that he wants the AG to look at it to make sure that that's within his power. So now that Garland has that power, that we're going to see a lot of these things come forward. So it's good. The fact that Garland was held up this long is absurd, and once again, the reason he was held up, and a lot of these were held up, was because for the first month of the Joe Biden administration, the Republicans were technically in charge of the Senate. Now you'll say, well, why is that? They don't have the majority. They shouldn't be in charge. Well, for some reason, there is a power sharing agreement, and because the power sharing agreement, the last time there was a split like this was in the early 2000s. And Mitch McConnell said, no, I'm not going to sign on to that power sharing agreement. And by not doing that, the Senate automatically reverts back to the previous power sharing agreement, which was when the Republicans were in charge under Donald Trump. So for the first month, the Republicans were in charge of all the committees. So the Judicial Committee, which Lindsey Graham was the head of, just held Merrick Garland up. He just did it again because he could. And they were still mauling about the election and stuff. They didn't want to allow the Democrats to start doing stuff. So that's why a lot of these confirmations are going to be pushed through really quickly now, because the American Rescue Plan has gone through. The impeachment is over. It is time to get down to more serious actual fights. Well, let me rephrase it. Not more serious actual fights. We're going to do more fights now. These are going to be the actual political fights, because everyone knew that this bill was going to pass. It had to pass through Democrats' support. There was hope that maybe Republicans might actually see the light and support it. That hope did not come through. Like I said, 3 times they had the option to vote for it, and 0 times they voted for it. 0. Never happened. So there's that. The other thing with the Republicans is it's worth mentioning that one of the things, the side stories for the House that's worth watching is Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she doesn't actually have any more power because she's not on any committees, is doing whatever delay tactics she possibly can. So they're doing one of 2. One of them is, and this one is now started to wear thin because she tried again today, and 40 Republicans voted against it, is at 10:30 in the morning when they start, she stands up and says, I want to vote for us to adjourn because I don't, and her argument is the Democrats need to think over this legislation that they're going to pass through without any Republican support because it's bad legislation. That's her argument. But she did this. This is now the 4th time she's done this. And she succeeded. I don't know if she actually succeeded. Anyway, the Republicans, originally all of them backed her, then a couple of them didn't, and now they're like done with this. So the other thing that she's doing is she's calling for a vote on a non-unanimous vote to read out every single thing that they do. Now, some of the things that Congress doesn't need to be like read out to the American people, like naming a post office, or the first time she did this, she stopped the awarding of gold medals to the police officers who defended the Capitol on January 6th, which makes sense because she supported the insurrection. So look, there's a lot of stuff that went on today. This was a good day for the Joe Biden administration. Now, for the rescue plan, he said he's going to sign it on Friday. The reason he can't sign it today, I guess, is they have to do paperwork. I don't understand why it can't be sooner, but they said they expect the checks out sometime possibly next week or within the next couple of weeks. The checks are coming, so you will receive your $1,400 stimulus dollar check depending on where your tax bracket is. They will be aiding for a whole bunch of states. All the states will get aid. There will be vaccine distribution and research. Schools will get budgets. There'll be tax credits for child tax credits. There's going to be a lot in this bill. So now the things that aren't in this bill that we're going to hype on that are going to be fought. The $2,000 straight checks that's dead now. But the other fight that came out from not being passed in this bill is going to be the $15 minimum wage. I've had a couple of videos on that. There's so as the minimum wage stands, it's $7.25 is the national minimum wage. There's states that have above that, whether they are between like $8 or $15 it varies by state. Most recently, Florida decided that they wanted to have a $15 minimum wage. They voted for that. So I don't understand why Joe Biden didn't, advocate for that in Florida. Maybe he wouldn't won Florida, but there's that. So the $15 minimum wage is now a fight that's going to happen, and what is ultimately going to happen with that is unclear because it's not clear what exactly they're going to be able to get Republicans on board. Currently, there's about 6 of them who are proposing a $10 or $11 minimum wage. No, it's a $10 minimum wage, which would be a less than $3 hike for the current minimum wage. And of those 6 Republicans who are proposing that, 2 of them live in states where the minimum wage is already higher than $10. That's Tom Cotton, and I want to say it's Susan Collins. But I'm not sure. I'm certain it's Tom Cotton. Arkansas is above $10. I don't remember who the other senator is. So, but once again, on the minimum wage, the important thing is the $15 is the compromise position as it is, because if you kept it up to inflation and production, it would be somewhere between $19 and $25 an hour. And as I covered in the Man on the Street video, as I covered in multiple other videos, the $7.25 is not enough. And as I covered in my PRO-ACT video, if you have a union, so like for example in Alabama, they're fighting for a union in Amazon. Amazon already pays them at that workshop $15, and they say, well, you don't need a union. We're already paying you double the minimum wage. However, in states that have a $15 minimum wage, if you have a union, and this is in other Amazon workshops or fulfillment centers, you're getting paid $19 an hour. So you're already getting more for having the union if you have some type of baseline. Then that's why you need a higher baseline for this so people can survive, because these aren't survival checks. the $14 are, but these are starvation wages. People cannot afford to work 40 hours a week and live in this country on $7.25. It's not possible. Katie Porter does a whole lot of stuff every time when she talks to one of these big businessmen. I think it was the Chase or Bank of America. She had one of the CEOs. This was a couple of years ago, and she was talking to them, and she's like, "Look, I pulled up your website's information, and I went through what you say you pay your employees, and I can't afford heating. I can't afford a phone bill, and I can barely afford food just from what you're paying your employees. Can you tell me what type of smart budgeting a person is supposed to do this?" And I was just flabbergasted. There was the other. I wish I remembered who did this. There was that one study where you needed to do you'd have to have 2 jobs anyway just to survive, and that was without heat or other amenities. So look, having the minimum wage fight is important. I think it's going to be the 4th fight that comes out, but it'll ultimately. So whatever the next fight is, it should be HR 1 because it's also SR 1, which is the Senate's version of their bills. So the way it works is the House numbers their bills, and then the Senate numbers their own bills. So it's HR 1 or SR 1, and then they can vary depending on which bill it is. So HR 1 is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and it's the For the People Act. It's the expansion of voting. I have a video on this. It's going to be it should be the next fight because as we currently see in Georgia, they're rolling back voter rights. Currently in Georgia, the bill that they passed, they closed down weekend voting, no absentee voting. If you are online for a voting center and somebody gives you food or water, that person is now at risk of facing a felony. It's a felony for feeding somebody on a line. That's how bad this is getting. So HR 1 is designed to help alleviate these laws that are designed to stop people from voting. So the purpose of HR 1 is to allow the American people the basic civil right to vote, and that's where they push. So the big fight with HR 1 is it should be whichever bill is next. I would hope it's HR 1, or the Equality Act, or it's the George Floyd Act, or currently this is something I'll talk about later in the week is HR 8, which is their Gun Control Act, which is designed to close the loopholes, the show loopholes. I was starting to look into this yesterday. I'm going to have an actual video covering what exactly HR 8 is because that appears to be the next bill that the House is looking to pass. Or they're currently discussing it now. I don't know if they're going to pass it tonight. I don't know how what their schedule looks like. So I'll cover that later. But whatever the next bill is, it's going to be a 2-pronged fight. It's going to be both whatever the actual bill is to pass and versus how much filibuster reform are we going to get? Because if they try, so let's say they do the Equality Act, which was one of the first things I covered, was it basically says trans people are people. You can't fire them people based on their sexual orientation. So that's what that is. And it's defeated by the filibuster, and then they try to do the George Floyd Act, and it's also defeated by the filibuster, and then they bring up HR 1, and it's looking like it's going to be defeated by the filibuster. At some point, they're going to have to do some filibuster reform. As I covered in the Joe Manchin Axios video, he appears to be willing to do some type of filibuster reform, whether it's a talking filibuster or if they can't deny it indefinitely, whether it's the splitting things, as I've covered in my filibuster video, splitting things based on how they're voting for, whether you do a carve out similar to the reconciliation process, you do it for Voting Rights Act, you do it for healthcare, you do it for this and that, and that's how you'd get around the filibuster, or whether you limit the time that it requires to have a discussion in order to lower the voting threshold. So there's things like that. The fact that all this stuff is happening now is good because this was the big one. You had to get this rolling so you could get this rolling, and you're going to get goodwill from this bill. This would hopefully embolden Congress to be more aggressive and pass other bills that have a lot of goodwill. HR 1 has a lot of popularity. Like I've said over and over, the George Floyd bill is a little bit more. It's a little bit more of an argument against it, but this look, the George Floyd bill is to change how policing is done in America. If you pass a bill like this, and the way you do it, and the argument you get against them is, Democrats are going to defund the police in order to do this. All you have to do is point out, and this is hopefully what should happen on every single time any single person gets asked this question, is the only people who have voted to currently defund the police are the Republican Party. They chose not to give states money in order to keep their functions going. One of the functions a state has to pay for is the police. They also voted to defund teachers, which isn't a big deal for Republicans. They've been doing that forever. Kentucky, prior to the pandemic, had 4-day school weeks. They literally had, their Supreme Court had to step in and say you cannot taxes any lower, because if you do, you'll make schools unfundable in this state. So they're not fine with that, but they're hurting hospital workers. They're hurting people who are actually working for the government. A lot of pension government workers are African American, and they're going to be hurt. They would have been hurt by delaying the budgets in these states. So that's a problem there that's being covered by this act. Look, this is generally a pretty good act. There's a lot of really good stuff. The majority report covers a lot of it in depth, and I've covered a good amount of it in depth, and I will keep repeating that it's worth repeating over and over how good this bill actually is. So there's a lot of good, important stuff in this bill. I'm happy it passed. And it needs to be hammered home every single time that the Republicans have decided it is more important to argue about Dr. Seuss or the Muppets or whatever cancel culture thing or Pepe Le Pew that they're complaining about now than actually trying to help the American people. And they'll say, this bill was terrible. But then when you put amendments in it that were adopted, you still voted against it anyway. So they had the plenty of time to reach out for it. So this idea that Joe Biden wasn't bipartisan is just wrong, because he did this, and the Republicans decided, no, we're not going to help you under any circumstances. So I know this was a little rambly. There's a lot of stuff that's happened, and it's happening fast. So it's good. The Joe Biden administration has a lot of things that they have to deal with. I think they're going to do it as an infrastructure bill tied with the green energy that's going to come up soon. I don't know if that's going to come directly from him into the House, or the House has an infrastructure bill that they're going to try to pass, or the Senate has an infrastructure bill. But they have a lot. Look, I named at least 4 bills that are going to have to be discussed and brought up from the Senate, because the Senate was, is slower than the House is for this, because they have to wrangle all the 60 votes or however many they're going to do for each thing. They also were slowed down by the impeachment. So if you like what I do, please like and subscribe. Please follow me on Twitter @FacesIdeas. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next one.